Powers is like, I give you some advice. I'm not married. I have no friends. And both my parents are dead. And he just starts laughing. And that's how the scene ends.
Yeah. He's like weirdly maniacal through this whole thing.
Like, what a weird note to end a scene on. Oh, yeah, my parents are dead and I have no friends. Welcome back, everyone, to S1E1, the show where each week we pick a different sitcom, watch just the first televised episode, and forgetting anything we might know about the future run of that show, rate it and decide if it's a show we want to greenlight or cancel. This week we're going to be talking about George Lopez. George Lopez went 120 episodes over 6 seasons on ABC. Today we're talking about episode 1, which was called Prototype, which originally aired March 27th, 2002. So to get things started, I'm Jay Gags. With me as always, the boys, Nick, Ferg, Joe, and that's it. Gordo's not here today. What's going on, guys?
Hello.
It's not just my legs. It's something else, too.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about that scene. I can't wait.
Why are you guys going to be weird about everything?
I was going to warn
that
you
scene
guys.
is literally a teenage girl vagina hair scene. That's the joke.
Oh my God, it's not.
It is.
We'll get to it. That's what it was meant. We'll talk about that.
Hey, guys, why is it called Prototype?
That's what I don't get. Why is it called Prototype?
I assume because of the airplane factory.
Even then, it's not like test. Ferg, I thought the same thing. As I was writing everything down, I'm like, I just don't understand why it's called this.
They're just big John Cena fans.
Maybe it's a play on the word pilot.
I would have to check. I'm going to check as I'm speaking. I think that the Big show was also called Prototype.
Is that
the
term for pilots?
The Big Show.
I mean, essentially, a pilot is a prototype.
Yeah.
The Big show also called Prototype, episode 1. But yeah, so George Lopez, which I can't. My brain wants to say the George Lopez Show every time, but it's just called George Lopez.
It's confusing because he's had 3 sitcoms. He's had George Lopez, St. George, and Lopez. So it's very hard to not confuse the 3 of them.
The Bob Newhart situation.
Yeah. But he's got 3. It's not like there was Bob Newhart and New Bob.
There was a 3rd Bob Newhart show. He was like a comic writer.
Shit, I don't remember that.
Also,
was it called Lopez?
It was something Bob. There was like Bob was in the title.
Bob Lopez, comic writer.
If only they had they brought back Celebrity Deathmatch. We could have Bob Newhart versus George Lopez.
Oh, that would make me very sad because I don't know how tough Bob Newhart's going to fight these days.
Hey, old man strength.
In claymation form.
Bob needs a Newhart. I felt bad saying it too.
Anyways.
That man's a saint. How dare you?
I love Bob Newhart. A joke presents itself. I have to say it.
So, George Lopez, this show. Did you guys watch this growing up? Not growing up. It was 20 years ago now. So we weren't super young, but are you guys familiar with the show or is this kind of a new watch for you?
This was my older in life comfort bedtime Nick at Night show.
Same. I never saw this early into the show before.
I've seen a lot of it. I don't remember this specific episode, but I definitely remember stuff. It's tough to tell because, I mean, George kind of looks the same the whole time. Like short
his hair gets short.
The hair is the change.
But I remember the kids being this young.
I will say I've never seen this show before, not 1 second of it. I remember it being on, but I may be confusing it with one of the other shows. But it is delightful.
Right?
I've seen the show like scattered episodes. I've seen a lot of episodes, but never like, oh, it's Thursday, time to watch George Lopez.
I think we caught it in syndication anyways. I don't know. Where did it normally air, Jay?
ABC 2002. So you figure 20 years ago, we're all like 15, 16.
Yeah, so I don't think we were watching that when it was on. And it went 6 seasons, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from 2002 to 2008-ish.
So we're going from like 16 to 22. Probably not a time where we're home primetime watching a lot of television like that.
And I would say it probably went into syndication on Nick at Night probably around 2010, maybe, if I were to guess. I don't know exactly.
Yeah. 4 or 5 seasons in.
But to your point, I never like watched it on like a Hulu, or I think it's on Peacock right now. So I've
Yeah,
never
it's on
watched it
Peacock.
episode by episode. I've just watched what was given to me. So I don't know how much of the show I've actually seen, but I would guess a lot of it.
Yeah, it was one of those shows that was on Nick at Night that I had never heard of before it was on Nick at Night, which was strange to me.
Right. Yeah. Same.
I feel like it was in the weird wheelhouse of time where if anything was on a weeknight, when you're like a mid-teenager, you're out of the house, right? Like you're not watching a ton of this stuff. And I think this show switched time slots a lot too, which is never easy for somebody to follow along, right? So it probably ended up getting the death slot at some point where it was on a Friday where like no one's around to watch TV.
Also, to breach your
Birth.
to get onto TV in 2002, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I imagine there was some pretty stiff competition around then too.
I think one of the biggest things they said that killed them was they kept putting them opposite American Idol.
That too. I mean,
Which
Friends
in 2002
Friends was in its later years too.
Yep.
So depending on what night it was and stuff, so that could just be a product of everything that surrounded it, really.
Those are the first couple of years of American Idol where they showed people getting made fun of and singing poorly when it was actually interesting to watch.
Yeah, well, with this show too, it's not like I wasn't aware that the show existed. Like, there's shows that we've covered that I didn't even know they ever happened until we decided to do an episode on them. I was well aware of this show. I mean, I'd seen it, but in its main run, no, I probably wasn't watching it live. I don't know if I ever saw an episode live.
And this is interesting too. The creator of this show is also the creator of Bless This House, our episode 2 weeks ago.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Also, this is back-to-back shows where Nick Offerman has made small appearances.
Huh.
Like, Bless This House, that's an example of a show I didn't know existed until we did an episode.
Whereas
of
this
it.
was one you knew about, you just never saw.
Yeah, I didn't really, like, I've seen it, but I didn't really, in its main run at least, I wasn't really watching it whenever it was live.
I do love, Jay, I thought of you when looking up information about this show. George Lopez is quoted at one point before this show came on the air saying that he was mad that there was such little representation of like Chicanos and Chicano culture on television. And his exact quote was, "So a caveman can be on TV, but a Chicano can't?" So even George Lopez is just dunking on you, caveman.
Which you greenlit. If anyone wants to go back and listen to our Caveman, it was our 1-year anniversary episode. We did Caveman.
The
Phenomenal.
episode's not
sitcom.
as bad as it could have been, but still, it's caveman.
No, you just like everything.
That's not true. I canceled Will and Grace because it is terrible.
That's true. It was a surprising cancel, too. I did not expect it from you. Because you're such a greenlighter. It's crazy.
There's a few cancels in my past.
You make me sick.
If I could go back in time, I'd cancel Friends, but it was our first episode, and I didn't know where I was yet.
It would be fun. Like, there are so many shows that we still need to do, but I would almost be curious where our shows changed, since we've started a little bit. We go a little deeper. We look at things a little different. It would be interesting to redo Friends.
I'll tell you, I'd cancel Perfect Strangers now.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before. I do think we should go back and just kind of rapid fire. Well, on our own time, go through and see if there's anything we thought we would have changed, and then have a show where we go through and rapid fire if we would have changed.
Do I have to watch like 70 episodes of television again?
No, I mean just go and you'll see if you greenlit or canceled it, and you'll be like, no, because there's a few that stand out to me that I kind of wish I would have.
Which one do we do? And guys, if you're just catching up with us now, please go back. We have everything's listed. You can listen to all our old episodes.
Almost 70 of them now.
I'm trying to remember what show was it that Joe absolutely did not like, and he still greenlit it because he said, friends of mine said I'd like it.
It was
That was not my reasening.
It was
Yes, it was your reasoning.
It was your reasoning. And I'll tell you what it was in a second. Just give me a minute.
That doesn't sound like me.
It's you. You cannot say no to episodes. You have such a hard time with it.
Cancel Will and Grace.
Yeah, that was like
You can't live on
one.
that forever.
I canceled more than one.
He canceled one last week, and he's got that like, see?
All right, we need to look at this and check back the numbers. I've canceled more than one show.
Let me look real quick.
And I'm on record. I would go back and recancel.
It was
Friends.
Trailer Park Boys.
Trailer Park Boys. It wasn't because my friends would like it. I said that I could see it be. I mean, I probably fucked up by not saying that. Going just on the pilot. I should probably, when I go back, I will cancel that to make things right with the world.
Which again, not to go too much into old episodes, but yeah, Trailer Park Boys is one that, I don't know, I know you guys have a big fandom for. I've only seen them now, just that pilot episode for the purpose of this show. But Joe, the whole episode you talked about how much you didn't like it. And they went, green light. What?
I'm taking back my caveman green light then. Fuck you, Jay.
Yeah,
that
me too.
That one's stamped in.
Caveman's canceled.
Caveman is canceled. Fuck off.
It doesn't work that way. Caveman clearly got 3 out of 5 votes. But in any event, George Lopez, before we even get into the episode, which we've stalled enough, but George Lopez as a comedian, how familiar were you with him before his run as like a sitcom dad?
You mean as like a stand-up?
Yeah.
I never saw. I think to this day, I don't think I've seen his stand-up, and I'm very into stand-up. Like I love stand-up comedy, but I don't think I've ever watched his for some reason. Not because I don't want to, but I've just never come across it.
Didn't he pull like a Carlos Mencia and steal jokes too?
I don't think so.
I don't think anybody's got a bad thing to say about him.
I
think he went after him or someone else. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he punched Carlos Mencia in the face once, actually.
I think
backstage.
you're correct. I think that's what it was.
Double points for what a fucking awesome dude
Yeah,
George
right?
Lopez is. Because I was going to say, he's one of those people to me that he's just weirdly culturally present. Like, he just seems like he's been on TV and around for so long that he's like, oh, it's George Lopez.
He's got big Tim Allen vibes.
There's some big Tim Allen energy here, which maybe that explains why, like, again, not to... I know we talked about it at the top and we can say what we feel or whatever, but I loved this show. This was my kind of sitcom, and also anything that's less than 20 minutes without commercials. Holy cow, that makes my life. I like a show way more. Will and Grace was 23 minutes. What the fuck?
You see, I got Bill Cosby vibes, but like good Bill Cosby, not the Bill Cosby we found out.
Television.
Television Bill Cosby.
To be fair, the theme song for this has
Huxtable vibes, not Cosby vibes.
Don't get me started on the theme song because I was very upset I didn't get to hear Lowrider.
I know, that's a bummer. But
we'll talk about that. Actually, let's get into the episode because I do want to talk
for
about that. Just to start off, the very first scene, it starts with George. He's just heading down to his kitchen. It's morning time. He's getting his like morning coffee, getting ready for work. His wife and kids are downstairs. His wife's like, oh, I figured out a way you can get more respect at work, and like holds a tie up. You know, like this says like I'm the boss, because clearly he just got a promotion. That's what they're telling us early in the episode. Not new to the job, new to the position at the job.
Yeah, I love this too because like it's such a classic trope of like, but if you wear a tie, people think you're serious. Mrs. Pac-Man wears a bow and everybody knows she's a girl. It's like, it's fine. No one wears I mean, I love wearing a tie, and I do video calls with corporate people all the time. I never wear a tie. I wear a button up. I never put a tie on anymore.
I think you're seeing the
Pac-Man.
death of like the formal suit in the business world, honestly.
I think
'cause
you
it's-
are,
First
too,
of all,
yeah.
it's not necessary anymore. People wore suits like on Sundays when they went grocery shopping back in the day, and like it
Oh,
just,
put
like,
on your Sunday's finest.
right. And it's just I don't know. They're expensive. They're hot. They're uncomfortable. So
I hate them.
I hopefully in the next decade or so, I want to see them get phased out.
I do like suit coat and jeans though.
I don't.
That's it. Like I always associate that with like Bam Margera.
Oh well. Oh fuck
Oh,
that.
so it's
no.
the worst.
Joe
Yeah, so you associate it with
changed his mind.
garbage.
Oh well, in his run, I was a big. That's a whole separate conversation.
Yeah, don't
Jay,
get me started.
get up and show over to
I'll
your
say
heartogram
something that
tattoo.
Nick will have to edit.
So, with George, he actually explains the tie doesn't work for me at my job because I work at an airplane parts factory, and he does like a little gag where he mimics, him getting sucked into an engine, essentially.
You think it's a prototype engine?
Maybe it was. Maybe the engine was the prototype.
I will say though that it's never not a visual you can't see. When someone says like getting sucked into the propeller of a plane, your brain immediately sees it. Like
I
John
thought,
Amos in Die Hard 2.
I'll be completely honest. I work at the airport. We've established that. You guys, some of you who've been listening for a while might know I work for an airline. When I was going through training, part of training is they show you videos of that happening to people.
No, real videos?
Graphic?
Not super graphic ones, but they're like, hey, this is a real thing that can happen. See? And like,
I remember when I worked at the airport, you'd have to drive on the tarmac, and I would always get stuck next to the Cape airplanes as they spun up the propellers. And I'm talking like 15, 20 feet from me is just a spinning propeller. And I'm like, I hate this. I hate this. I hate
don't wanna
this.
be anywhere
Please
near
go.
this.
Yeah. It's terrifying.
try when you're just like wing walking and you're just walking alongside of those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought they're really establishing right off the bat, like, this is what he does for a living. Just throwing that out there with like the very first lines of the show, which I'm fine with. I think it sets the scene a little bit.
I think they did a really good job with doing this for the entire episode. They got right into it without making you feel like you missed something pretty well. And I tried to remove myself from knowing about the show. I still think they did a good job.
Yeah, I don't have as much backlog. Like, I don't watch the show very often. modern day, but it does, like, you get thrown right into the world, but you don't feel lost.
Yeah, I love that. You just are like, oh, this is a day in their lives, and I'm here with them.
Yeah, and I think they tell you that he's been there for 16 years, but he's new to the role of being manager. There's a honk from outside, like it's his ride to work. But as he's on his way out, his wife Angie discovers that their daughter has a fake note in her bag for swimming. She's trying to get out of swimming class. And the note says it's because she has her period. She's not even mad. She's like excited that her daughter is becoming a woman. And her instant reaction is, oh, I have to call everybody. And I just kept thinking that.
It made me laugh.
As a guy, like, that's obviously, none of us really know, right? We didn't deal with this. You know, Joe and Fergie both grew up with sisters, so I don't know how close to those, how openly that stuff's talked about.
Don't remember it ever coming up, or at least not the first time,
Yeah, I could just imagine the horror of being a young girl and dealing with that and having the reaction be like, we need to tell everybody. Everyone needs to know about this.
Right,
That
like,
was
I
the
remember
joke.
being
They
like,
wouldn't tell everyone.
I remember the first time people were like, hey, you stink, put deodorant on. This is you now. Like, I remember that, But that's not like...
times 10, yeah.
That's not like a embarrassing thing so much,
That would be like, we don't have a comparable moment. As guys, we really don't. Never mind. You know what?
Don't.
Never
You
mind.
just don't.
Her younger brother, Max, their other child, asks, hey, like, what's a period? George chimes in and just says, it's a bullet we dodged. Get ready for school. And smart. I mean, his son was, I would say, what was he, probably about 6? Maybe somewhere in that range.
Older than that.
Yeah, I'd say
think
probably
so?
about 8 or 9, maybe, but
Really thought he was that old?
Yeah.
it's in that
I honestly
range.
thought, though, the joke was going to be, it's what comes after a sentence. Like, I didn't think it was going to be... Like,
Oh, yeah,
I
it
thought
could've
that
been
was the
something simple
easier
like that.
joke. So glad they went with something that I was like, oh, I see what he's doing here.
One thing I remember is, not to get more into the future, that kid ages super awkwardly.
He doesn't. He's another one of
gets-
those kids who kind of never really learned to act either.
Yep, he gets big and lanky and can't act.
Yeah.
Did they ever explain why his middle name is Magic Johnson?
What?
What?
His character name on the show, if you look him up, is Maximilian Max Victor Roberto Magic Johnson Lopez. So I imagine there must be some episode that is hilarious about when he was conceived and maybe they ran into Magic Johnson or something.
I bet it was just canon, like, he probably yelled it at him once, like, he was reprimanding him and called him by his full name, and it's just canon for the show. I bet there was no in-depth for that.
Maybe, yeah. Like one of those things where it's like, yeah, they say your name and it's supposed to be funny and they don't talk about it ever again.
Right. We also discover that this isn't the only note in Carmen's bag. She has, like, over a month's worth of notes trying to get her out of swim class. Angie wants to deal with this whole situation immediately, but George is trying to go to work. That's when his mom runs in, because she was the one who was waiting for him. She was the one honking. She called him what, like Rico Suave when she first shows up? So that was like a weird, I don't know. It felt like a forced line.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of forced ones in here, but I guess, pilot of a sitcom, you're trying to get the family dynamic together.
They're just trying to show the mom the spitfire.
Yeah, also, they really push her character as, like, a little too much sometimes.
Yes. George doesn't have time for like this whole, we need to be parents to our daughter right now because he does have to go to work. He says to Angie, why does she need to learn how to swim anyways? We're already here, which was fun. I mean, and this was, he said, right, there's not a lot of Mexicans represented on television. So he's got like first pick of all the easy jokes, right?
Yeah, like pick him off,
Yeah, it's like, it's a simple joke, but what other sitcom got to use it? So he has a full reign. He has first shot at every generic Mexican joke you can use. He'll be the first one to use it on TV.
He also has such a funny delivery that, like, even jokes like that are, like, low-hanging fruit are funny just because he's funny.
He has a super charisma to him.
Yeah.
So I don't know why he doesn't be like, we have 2 kids, 1 girl, 1 boy. I'll handle all the boys' problem. The girl problems are yours.
Well, it seems like he gets along better with the girl, though. He might actually want to flip that, because if you watch this, like, later in this episode, you're like, they kind of forget that Max exists. He
doesn't have much.
Yeah. He's a punchline for the grandma only. He's not really a character in this episode.
What a risk you take when you're casting. Like, we talk about how some of these kids grow up and they're just either not good actors or they're awkward. You don't know, right? When you're hiring look at Disney, right? Who, I don't know, somehow has a magic ball that they hire all these kids who end up becoming like the biggest stars in the world. Who become
all become crazy.
They're all like hot adults though. Like, I don't know what they're like looking for in these children, but they nail it on the head, like guys and girls, like every time for the most part.
Yeah,
It seems weird to me when you say hot adults. It's such a funny way of saying it because that is a weird way of saying that either there are ugly adults, but also possibly hot children.
No, not that's what I'm saying is you can't look at a kid and go like, oh, he's going to be hot or she's going to be hot.
I hope
But like,
not.
but somehow all these people that they hire become like, the Justin Timberlakes, Britney Spears of the world's, Demi Lovato's, like all those. They have quite the track record of major success. Yeah, you don't know with these kids and you get them young and who knows what's going to happen in a few years. And then you're just kind of stuck or you do the typical write them off on a sitcom or recast.
They've gone to boarding school or whatever. Is it we have to see them anymore? Yeah.
George's mom's like, they lie to you because they're not afraid of you. And she says, I don't see any of them getting hit. And she's very animated every time she talks. And Joe, you just kind of touched on that earlier. At this point of the episode, and from this point forward, I couldn't shake it. Every time she speaks, she comes off as Rob Schneider acting like an old Mexican woman.
Rob Schneider is George Lopez's mother. He's going to find out how hard being Lopez's mother really is.
Like, couldn't you see, like, if they told him, like, this is what you need to do, like him just enunciating and acting the same exact way she does every time?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I heard he was almost cast for this, but he passed up on it to play the animal.
A carrot.
I didn't realize that George Lopez was half stapler.
FYI, in my quick Google searching, it seems that George Lopez and Magic Johnson are actually really good friends, so maybe that's why.
Oh, okay.
I know, I was just reading. I've been quiet. I've been reading all about the son, and there's nothing about the reasoning.
Yeah, there's nothing mentioning the naming
Sure.
as that, but
I'm
see
sure
them
it was a
together
throwaway.
Yeah.
And then George tells Carmen that, he's going to lie to her soon, and that's going to be how she learns how hurtful lying can be. And as she's leaving, he said something along the lines of like, oh, and I'm going to fix the brakes on your bike as soon as I get home from work. And then she stops because she's like, wait, is that the lie? He's like, He gives like the shrug. He's like, wear a helmet.
This is fun because it gives him a license to just be a total shithead to his daughter the whole episode.
Yeah.
Which is like a great, and he gets to be to her a lot for a 20-minute episode. We talk again about how great an episode is. It's under 20 minutes. Holy cow.
We talk
Probably my
about
favorite joke in the whole episode because it goes through the whole thing, and she just keeps asking like,
And everyone,
He's
every
like, "You're not
every
getting it,
option
are
he
you?"
gives is funny.
well, we always talk about callbacks and smarter written shows. They have runners throughout the whole episode where they'll kind of go back to other jokes. And sometimes it's super forced. I thought this was a great example of a joke that it was a small beat in the episode. It wasn't like the main plot point where like, what's the lie?
Yeah,
It's just, they just kind of keep it going. So there's like consistency the whole way across. But then the button on that whole thing was George's mom saying that, he learned a lie from me. And it's like, well, what lie did you say to him? It's like, oh, when we told George that we didn't have enough money to send him to college. Again, really early, I got to be honest. I hate her. I hate her character so much. Every time she talks,
the
I'm
mother?
super annoyed. Yes, I hate her.
I mean, I think that's by design. She's just like this crotchety,
Overbearing.
mean old lady. Like, that's the point
But it was
of
like
her,
too
yeah.
much. Like there were points of the episode where, and we'll get into them, where it was too mean. And it was like, it took the tone from the show at times.
I know she's always a dick like throughout the whole series, but she gets like better. I don't know if it's better act like gets the character better or what, but like there's not much change, but it gets easier to deal with. Like she's one of my favorite characters, but I'm not wild about her in this episode.
Now, later on, do we meet siblings of George's? Because I feel like this sets up the I treated you like shit, but your siblings better. Does anybody else get that vibe at least? Like we didn't have money to send you to college. Like I can totally see in sitcom world, then they meet the other brother or sister who they
Kind of
get on.
like Andy in The Office.
Yeah.
I can say I have no vivid, like I said, I've seen a bunch of episodes of the show, but I could not tell you the plot point to a single episode other than the one I just watched. But from there we get into the actual, like the intro to the show. And this I was curious about. So I've always known the theme to the show to be Lowrider.
Yeah.
Is this a situation where it was like for DVD purposes, they couldn't use the song?
Yep.
Yeah,
Or-
that's definitely what happened.
Or was season 1 different and then they changed the song?
Whole series was Lowrider. This was a rights issue.
Okay.
Although I think it's back on Peacock.
All right, because I was super curious when it was playing. So the theme is the intro.
So
to
I
the
was
show
going
is
to
very
say,
simple.
I watched it on Peacock. Did you guys not watch it on Peacock?
No, I always watch the version that I keep on the drive.
I did that too,
So
just
it
as
did
working.
play Lowrider. Thought I was going crazy. I'm like, oh, I must have heard a different song. It
Oh,
does
okay.
play
The version
Lowrider
in this
on
one is just
Peacock,
George Lopez making weird noises like, oh,
I did not see
It's
that.
very
porn
weird.
music. It's
More Cosby vibes.
it's straight up porn music with him just doing like ad libs over it. But the first one before like he makes it's all different like noises. But the first one is kind of a moan. and you're like, what is this?
It's not
the
family
wrong
sitcom
version.
opening.
So
It's
like you don't
people
have
on
the
the trampoline, people bouncing, and then hearing like, oh, what the fuck is going on here?
It's so weird, but I don't know if you're going to have to, if you have a licensing deal, right? And this is just a problem for the DVDs and you're going to give it a generic song. Why did you go above and beyond to have him go into the recording studio to just like moan over some porn music?
Yeah,
Like, did you need him to show up for that?
Like, just get back in, yeah. Or just like a title card or something. Like, you didn't have to keep the whole
Or
people
you
jumping
make-
around.
You make a parody of Lowrider.
Yeah, you
not
make
exactly,
a
but
lowrider
something similar.
knockoff.
A sound-alike.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I'm trying to say, not a parody.
This one was so weird, but again, it's tough to judge if it's not how it was originally aired. I thought maybe season 1 was different.
That's what I thought. I was like, because I was
Like, oh,
all
maybe they-
ready for
yeah.
it, but didn't
There's
happen.
plenty of shows that they change the themes, over the seasons. And also, why does so many shows have intros where the cast is jumping on trampolines?
90s!
I don't know. It was a big. I know. I remember it from that '70s show a lot.
Yep.
The
The Man Show?
All that.
Well, that was Juggies jumping on trampolines.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
There was one I swear we did very recently.
I know. I'm
too.
trying to think of it too. I can't think
I
of it.
can't remember which one it was off the top of my head, but I know we just covered one that did it.
The way the heads just pop up in this, though, was just like the Cosby Show intro we were talking about a couple weeks ago, where like the heads just kind of come out of like profile to the side.
Boy Meets World didn't do it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, it wasn't Boy Meets World. I was thinking, could it have been Kim's Convenience?
It wasn't California. No, Kim's Convenience. They just have them walking through the city and stuff.
Yeah, it's
She
just
gets off
cityscape
a
stuff,
bus
like in
and
Toronto
Not
stuff.
Saved by the Bell.
Yeah, I don't remember off the
Was
top
it
of my
Certainly
Step
head.
by
wasn't
Step?
California Dreams.
It's not Step by Step, is it?
No.
No, that's
No, 'cause
the whole
that's in a
theme
theme
park,
park.
and that's like
Oh,
45 minutes.
Yeah,
Although-
it's half the episode.
Although if you're a new listener and you're hearing us mention all these shows, you go, oh, I love that show. Go back and listen. We've covered all of them. But yeah, that doesn't really matter. But it's something I've noticed. There's a lot of shows that use trampolines as the effect. I don't know if it was just like fun. Like, you know how there's always like these editing trends that happen? Like the fisheye lens got popular for a while. The slow motion thing was probably like fun for people to do for a bit and became trendy. So maybe they just, trampolines were a good way to use that effect. So the next scene is when we're at George Lopez's work for the first time. And it's Powers and Sons Aviation. That's what the exterior shows, at least. George walks into his office while his assistant is taking a call from one of the other crew members who's calling out for the day. That phone call, that was George Lopez on the phone, right?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
definitely George Lopez's voice.
Where he says he's bedriddle.
I
Yeah,
thought it was
riddled.
Danny
Yeah.
Trejo.
No, that was 100% George Lopez doing a character.
Although
I'm
Danny
convinced
Trejo
of
is
it.
in one of the later George Lopez shows. I forget if it's Lopez or St. George, but he is one of the main characters, one of the other ones.
I can see that.
And also, they do a similar voice when they're putting on the, when they're doing their super kind of cartoony voice. They do sound very similar, because if you think of when Danny Trejo would do Henrique in King of the Hill, he does the same voice that the I'm yelling George Lopez does. They sound exactly the same, so I can hear that.
And yeah, that character is Danny Boy. And there was no one I saw credited as Danny Boy, which further leads me to believe that it was George Lopez. He not only is he bedriddle, but he said he has depression and he needs to move out of his mom's house and move into his aunt's house. It's a whole lot. He's given a lot. That's why he needed to call out. But George says, "You're back to Monday. You need to find a new job," and he hangs up on him. That's where that ends.
And he was on medical leave.
Yes, and his assistant's like, "Oh, it's weird having you as the boss now. It's
Hey,
now I have to
I-
respect you."
I can confirm that George Lopez did play Danny Boy officially.
Okay,
Oh,
perfect.
okay.
It's literally a Google question. That comes right up.
Was
I
he?
love that.
Maybe
I wonder if he's in
Danny
more
Boy.
episodes, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's a recurring thing.
Recurring gag. And the receptionist is super zany. She's a combination of Janine from Ghostbusters and is it Molly Shannon from Liar Liar? Who has the crazy hair.
I'm trying to remember what her role was in that. She just work at the legal office with him.
Yeah, and she had zany hair, and he couldn't lie to her about how she looked crazy.
I'm trying to think of who she physically reminded me of, because she had her look was very of the times. She had
Molly
that.
Shannon, or was it Sherry O'Terry?
Oh, I think it was Sherry O'Terry.
I know it was an SNL person, but
Yeah,
I
I
don't
confuse
think it
those
was,
two all the time.
I don't think it was Molly Shannon. Liar, Liar, great movie.
Yeah, she looked a
Pen
lot
is
like
blue.
I thought she looked like, I can't remember the character's name from the later seasons of Boy Meets World. The one who was the love triangle with Eric and the other one.
Oh god, it's been years.
Oh, the
since I've
tall
seen those.
redhead who does
Yeah.
porn now?
Yes, Maitland Ward is a real
Oh.
name. I can't remember her character's
Yeah.
name. Rachel?
Rachel.
George then heads out of the office and he kind of enters like the main line to greet everybody. And we see his buddy Ernie for the first time, who invites him to grab a beer with all of them during their lunch break. And George is like, oh, no more beer at lunch. Can't have everyone working these machines buzzed out. He's like, well, you used to. He's like, those 15 years were a mistake.
I've taken it doesn't matter. You work from home. I will say I have never gotten drunk on my lunch break working from home. There's no fun in that. But when you have a physical office, I mean, I'm sure everybody here has gone and had like a too long liquid lunch, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've done it.
I've never had it.
It does suck, though.
Yeah, it's awful. You become hungover 2 hours.
I think we've
later.
talked about it before on this show, too. It's like when you see those shows where, you know, like they're in the boardroom and everybody's got a glass of scotch or something in their hand. And it's like, where do you people have to be? It's 11:30 and you're all slugging brown liquor. Like, what do you plan on getting done after this? Like, it's not like you're impervious to getting drunk no matter who you are. So, I don't know.
In those cases you're talking about, it's usually like the board of directors.
That's how it's played a lot.
But it ruins your whole day. Like, you're like,
yeah.
You go because if you don't keep drinking, then you're super hungover. And if you keep drinking, you're going to get way too drunk to function because you're just drinking straight whiskey.
I'm a blue collar man, so I don't have those types of breaks where I can just go and enjoy cocktails in between.
I've done plenty of blue collar jobs.
Everybody in this episode is blue collar.
Yeah, but they're not supposed to. Well, I guess technically my job is not far from their job. But no, I do not.
I remember one time I was on a lunch break from work and I was working at this retail store. Then it was just like a temporary gig and I hated it. And I went to get a drink across the street and their POS system went down and I had no cash. And he was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't run your credit card. And I was like, what should I do? He was like, I mean, you could keep drinking until the machine comes back up. I was like, that's a great idea. So my half an hour break ended up being like a 2 hour break. And I came back to work so drunk. It was like, well, the machine was broken, so I couldn't pay for my beer. Just like, oh my God, get the fuck out of here.
And at no point did either of us think I could go to an ATM.
I wasn't thinking that way at the time. That bar is now a parking lot, I want to say too. Bummer.
Well, business decisions like that.
You're just waiting.
I paid for all the
to come
drinks.
back
The
up.
bartender was a genius. I had to pay for them eventually.
Yeah, he convinced you to stay and drink more.
Yeah,
It
he
would
was
have been
smart.
hilarious if your card got declined after all that.
And I just ran out. Oh, really quick too, I just wanted to bring up, I know we didn't bring up really anybody in this episode as to things they've done in the past or anything. I don't know if anybody jumped out at you, but Ernie in this episode is in one of my favorite movies of all time that I watched so much. Probably around the time this TV show came out. He's in Blood In, Blood Out, which I think we've talked about on this before. It's like a 3 hour long, like epic movie about Chicano gangs and going into jail in San Quentin. It's like one of the greatest movies of all time.
I have not seen it.
He's one of the main characters.
He does pop up in things all the time, actually, yeah.
Yeah, he's a great actor. Vincente, I think his name is.
I honestly
Valente Rodriguez. Yeah, but he pops up all the time. But if anybody gets the chance, it's like 3 hours long. But if you ever get the chance to see it, it's really good. Benjamin Bratt is one of the main characters. He's a big deal now. He's in the Marvel movies, right? I think he is. I think he's like a big deal in the Marvel movies now.
This guy,
Benjamin
Ernie?
Bratt.
No. God damn it. Hold on. Not Ernie, but one of the other main characters in the movie. This dude is definitely in Marvel movies now.
Well, I don't know
Also
the
on
movie.
George Lopez.
No, Joe's referring to characters from a movie that none of us have seen but him.
Who cares? Move on.
So how are we to confirm that he's in other things if we don't know who's in this movie?
I was just saying you should check out this movie, and also this character who's like another big actor is in it. You would know.
Michael Pena?
I mean, you would know Michael Pena.
Well, he's in the Marvel movies. That's the only thing I'm trying to draw. Trying to think of something that could be in a Chicano gang movie that would also be in Marvel movies.
You'd know this guy if you saw him.
Yeah, you definitely know this dude. I thought he was in Doctor Strange.
He's the love interest in Miss Congeniality.
He is, yeah. But he is in Doctor Strange. Yeah, that's what he's in.
But yeah, anyways, he tells Ernie that Thirsties, which is the bar that they go to, is now off limits. And Ernie's like, oh, I get it. It's one of those things where you know what we're doing and we know that you know, but we're just, we're not talking about it. And George essentially goes like, no, that's not the case. Thirsties is now off limits. Ernie's like, well, don't turn into like Mr. Clipboard. Remember the old Mr. Clipboard and what he used to say about him? And George is like, yeah, I remember. He used to talk about beating him up in the parking lot. Now he's like, that sounds so ghetto now. And he goes into a very Valley Girl accent when he talks about it. But how ghetto it sounds to be to beat up the manager in the parking lot. So something about that scene that I noticed is like they're doing this kind of walk and talk, and it's one of those times where so they land at the soda machine, but it's one of those when you do a standard 3 like camera sitcom, it's always weird when you see the cameras move along with the characters like that. I remember like Roseanne was the same thing, also like kind of in the factory situation, which was weird. But
There's no pan usually.
yeah, so like, was that something you guys noticed as it was happening, like the difference in how it was being shot at that moment?
It didn't, but it was weird. It's weird thinking about it in hindsight, I guess. Yeah.
It's interesting though because it is different, right? So like it immediately makes the show feel a little different than like most of what we cover instead of just cutting to the next hard camera.
Because nowadays it's like sitcoms are not just these types of shows, right? The family 3-camera sitcoms.
Now it's almost always single camera.
Yeah, like it's so different now. But like when you see these old school type sitcoms act in a different way, like with their camera work, it really like flags you.
I do like it though. That feels to me like a director who was like really giving a shit on the episode. You know what I mean? That this could also only be a thing that happens in the pilot because the guy they hired to do or whoever they hired to do the pilot is like going all out. You know, like
They're usually like guns for hire too. Like to do like there was a thing. Actually, the new Boy Meets World podcast, Pod Meets World, talked about it. There's a lot of directors who are strictly pilot directors. They were saying who kind of come in because there's a weird like thing about how they're paid. So if you work on a show, like you get residuals. So a lot of these guys work on all these pilots because you're linked to the show forever. It's like a weird situation.
That's smart.
Yeah, that's
I don't
interesting.
get it though, because if a pilot director directs a pilot a certain way, and then he's not there for the rest of the show, you sold it on this pilot, and then someone else is going to come in and do it their way.
But it's different. Like when you look at a lot of sitcoms, you can go through a whole season and every episode is a different director.
Yeah, that's just how they do it.
But
Because shows have such like their own vibe after a while.
I'm with Ferg though. So like a good example of that is Manhunter or Mindhunter, the Netflix show that was for a couple seasons. It was a great show, and David Fincher is like the big deal behind it. And the first episode he directs, it looks everything like a David Fincher movie does, and then he doesn't direct any other episodes. And you're like, well, you spent so much time making this whole thing look like you, and now you just have other people coming in trying to copy you. It seems like a weird way to sell the show, you know?
Yeah, but like with a sitcom, it's like, I'm sure if you, not that we would all be amazing, but if you gave me the 1s and 2s and brought me in for a middle season episode and said, this is what we do and this is essentially what your job is, you're going to figure out most of it.
Yeah, I guess it depends
why
on a show
do
like
they
this too,
change
where there's
directors?
just two locations.
They just, a lot of those directors aren't attached to, you don't get like hired to do a season of a show.
But I think people come back to, you see people who do like a lot. Like there are people who've done like 40 episodes of Seinfeld or 25 episodes of The Office.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that.
The question is though, why? Why don't you get hired to do the
Yeah.
whole show?
I don't know. Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
I just don't think that's a thing, but I don't know why.
I get it when it's a celebrity like director. You bring in someone like, and you can always get a feel for like what their episode's a little different. But like, I don't get why you wouldn't just bring in some guy, put him on payroll for the whole thing, and
Right? Like
It's
somebody
also-
who like their work.
I think part of it too is there's different writers too for different. Well, I mean, there's like a whole room of writers, right?
Right, like a writing staff.
So maybe it goes by like their relationships, and they're like, okay, you know, it's fucking Steve's job, Greg's job to write this episode, and Greg's like, you know, I'm friends with so and so. I think he would direct this episode really well. So maybe that's just. I think the writers and the directors have a pretty symbiotic relationship in the sitcom world. That's based on nothing. I just think that's maybe how it works.
Yeah, it's. I think of other podcasts, like I said, like the Boy Meets World one or Office Ladies, where you can they do what we do with the deep dives, but they have a little more insider perspective that they can tell you about. And like with The Office, they always do breakdowns of who directed each episode, and like they have Paul Feig who comes in and does a ton of episodes.
He has a lot, yeah.
But Paul Feig also does a ton of movies, so you're not you're like, here's this good director who's going to do a good job by the show, but he's not going to lock into us to, work on this for the next year and a half.
he's like, sorry guys, I gotta go ruin Ghostbusters. I'll be back.
You might he did Bridesmaids though. He's done a ton of big movies.
Bridesmaids is great.
And he
That's
was
one of
the
those-
skinny counselor in Heavyweights.
That's right. Yeah, forgot about that.
Do you know who's a very heralded and in-demand TV director?
Who?
Bobcat Goldthwait.
Oh.
He's like somebody you'll bring in on purpose. Like we were
I'll
just
be the
talking
Gordo.
about.
Jay, how's your impression coming?
Jay is still coming off of COVID and can't even talk like Jay right now.
It
Let
might be
alone
a better impression now, though. You could be right there.
I was gonna say maybe that's better.
No, he has a high pitched voice. It would be nearly impossible for me to get my voice up there right now. Every word I say is a struggle right now.
It's hard. It doesn't really matter so much nowadays because we live in like a weird isolated bubble where like you're sick with COVID or you're not sick. And it's been that way for like 2 years, which is just so weird to think of because you used to get used to being just like sick sometimes. But I used to always do the Gizmo from Gremlin's voice if I was getting sick, because if I couldn't do it, I knew I was fucked.
So right now you feel okay?
Yeah, see, actually, it sounds a little chirpy there. So
It's Howie Mandel here.
I just blow a condom up over my face. Pardon me, a what?
Hi everyone, my name is Megan,
And I'm Steve, and together we host the Stop Ruining My Childhood podcast.
a sometimes nostalgic, sometimes cynical, always humorous look back at pop culture.
Join us as we rewatch cartoons, movies, and live-action TV of the 80s and 90s and ask the question,
Does this hold up, or did I just ruin my childhood?
each week we talk about our childhood memories,
And dig into the history of everything we watch, sharing fun facts about how things were made and how they were received at the time.
more importantly, we always start our show with a nostalgic snack review.
Which is really our favorite part.
Episodes drop every Thursday on Podbean, Apple, Google, Spotify, Audible, YouTube.
Really, wherever you get your podcasts.
So like, subscribe, and follow.
And revisit your favorite childhood memories with us. All the links to listen are on our website, stopruiningmychildhood.com.
So anyways, George asks Ernie if he's still coming to the barbecue this weekend. And Ernie's like, yeah, but I need to find a date first. George is like, what happened? Weren't you dating 2 girls last week? He's like, yeah, it turns out they were dating each other. They were just tricking me so I'd drive them places. And
So sad and funny though.
I know,
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love the idea of like just an episode of him following around 2 girls all day, taking them to lunch and shopping. And
He's just
all
like,
the
this
while,
is great.
all the while he's oblivious that they're a couple and he's just buying them things.
And I've never heard this gag before, which somebody in the writer's room thought of like a funnier new way around like girls ignoring the guy or vice versa. You know what I mean? Like, oh, they're a couple and they're fucking with you to get rides. That's so funny.
Yeah, I know. It's like a shame that it's just like a one-off line because I want more of that. Give me
I want
a
to spin
whole
off
thing
of
that.
this show.
Like you can make a whole movie around that concept. But as that conversation wraps up, George's mom walks in and heads over to the punch clock. And she punches herself in and then like 5 other people. And George's like, you can't do that. She's like, well, the doctors told me that I couldn't push your head out of me, but I did that too. And I don't know. I already said I don't really like her character. She overacts every time she speaks.
In this episode for sure. I mean, maybe she's better. Do you punch into a clock like this still, Jay?
It's all mechanical now though. Like
Mine's
I have a-
fingerprint scanner.
I have a badge that I like a
Okay.
tap thing that I tap against a punch in. So that gets me, but I've never, even at like my old job, I had a code I had to punch in, but I never had the old stick the paper in and like
I
hit
don't
the
think
switch.
I ever have either, yeah.
I had it at Park Shuttle and Fly, and you had to line it up correctly, and like I made it my mission to get it perfectly in each line. It was not easy, but I did it.
Yeah, I've
Those
never,
things
never,
seem dangerous too.
I just stamp.
It seems to stamp pretty hard though.
but yeah, no, I've never, by the time we were working, and this was 2002, that's already kind of an outdated system. But
Yeah, the last
I get
job
the
I
gag.
had that needed one that like did anything else was just like you put your hand in it.
Yeah, I used to have one of those.
Like your whole hand?
Yeah. Just like slide the hand in and it like gave all 5 of your
And it
fingerprints, which now I'm
Punches
like,
a
well, that's
hole
not
in
good.
it to prove that you were at work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the old stigmata machine. But George heads back to his office, and now his boss, Mr. Powers, is there. The namesake of the company. It's like Powers and Sons Auto Parts. And he's waiting for him. And George says good morning to him, and Mr. Powers replies by telling him to roll up his pants. There's going to be a crap storm coming. And
I can't believe Gordo's not on this
I
episode.
know.
I know.
Because from here on out, it's so many Gordo
and
jokes.
fart
a lot of poopy and fart jokes.
Yeah.
George's line coming up though is got me good.
Yeah, because
Oh, yeah.
he's like, is it falling heavy in the mountains? I was hoping to do some crap boarding this weekend.
And again, where is Gordo?
We don't need Gordo because we're all laughing at it.
He's
too
hitting the
right now,
slopes.
so.
Yeah, Gordo's
Shit's
actually
like-
crap boarding this weekend. That's why he couldn't do the episode.
But after that, Mr. Powers gets into the real news and reason why he's there. He said they lost an account, and as a result, they're going to have to do some layoffs. and basically tells George, you have to pick. It's either Ernie and his team or your mom and her team. What a shitty fucking situation to put someone in. Like
Your mom or your best friend.
Yeah, like you have to fire them and their whole team of people. It's as if those are the only two divisions, by the way. Like there was no
It
third
looks like
option.
a pretty big operation when they show the building outside. I don't think there's just the two teams.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, who do you guys fire?
Well, you know what?
I don't know.
He lays it out pretty...
Are you talking about between those characters or my best friend?
No,
or
in
mine?
real life.
Oh, fuck.
My best friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I would have to look at the situation like George. It depends.
I'm sending this audio to your mom immediately after this conversation.
My mom doesn't want to work anymore anyways. But I'm saying like when George had to make the decision, he ultimately took his heart out of the situation and he went with what he thought was best for the company and his own job. So I think in that
I
situation,
know. What
you
I'm
have to look
saying
at the
though
big
is I
picture.
would do what's best for my mom. I don't care about the
right?
company.
Yeah, exactly. Your mom should be more important than your...
Although George's relationship with his mother is different than mine, so you
That's
know.
true. I don't think any of us have been stabbed by our moms.
And there's other things that get laid out too that we'll reveal as we talk more about the episode. But if the situation comes down to his mom, there is a contingency plan. So it's not like he would just fire her and like leave her out to dry. So
Well, I don't get why Ernie can't move in with them.
Better sitcom. Ernie's taking care of the daughter, teaching her how to shave her pubes.
no,
No, Joe.
nope.
He's going pits, man.
But anyways, George says that his mom's been a line inspector there for 30 years. And the boss is like, well, she's probably had some money saved up. It's like, what a heartless reaction to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, like,
yeah.
that's rough. Like, a lot of people have worked in a lot of places for a long time and have no money saved up.
Jobs like that aren't like, yeah, she's probably not getting rich working there either. It's
Right. I'm sure there's no profit sharing. I'm sure there's no crazy 401k.
And he even says,
knowing the end, though, it changes this conversation immensely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
You're like, what a heartless asshole, but he's really not. But he is.
yeah, yes and no. But he does say, no, she doesn't have anything saved up. Everything goes to bingo and cigarettes.
That's another line that he said that made me laugh a lot.
And then George says if he fires his mom, she's going to have to move in with him and his family. And how does he explain that to his wife? And so that's what I was saying. He did have like, if it has to be his mom, there's a plan at least. Powers is like, I give you some advice. I'm not married. I have no friends. And both my parents are dead. And he just starts laughing. And that's how the scene ends.
He's like weirdly maniacal through this whole thing.
Like, what a weird note to end a scene on. Oh, yeah, my parents are dead and I have no friends.
Nick, does George replace him later on? Because I don't remember that character.
No, he's around for like
Is he?
the whole series as far and his brother even shows up at one point. It's the Powers brothers.
Oh, okay.
I figure if he's a
at all.
namesake, he must be in the show, but
He's
that
what,
actor's
Jim?
been in a billion things since the 70s, but he's got the greatest real actor name ever, Jack Blessing. Like, he should be a 70s cop show guy.
He's the guy who's sitting with the other board members drinking scotch.
Oh, for
Should've
sure.
been on Thanks
Exactly. Yeah.
for the blessing.
He would be in a cop show that was him and then like a psycho partner called A Blessing and a Curse. I was like, I can't stand you, Curse! You blew up the whole neighborhood!
But damn it, you're a good cop.
But damn it, you're a good cop. And the Curse is clearly played by like an ex-NFL star from the 70s. Like,
Him and LT. Like,
Bobay Bimpson, maybe.
As Joe tries to think of a football player name. But so the next scene, George is back at his house and it's night. And you kind of hear the tail end of an argument between Angie and Carmen, and it results in Carmen running into her room. And she shuts the door. So George hears the noise and he heads into the hallway. That's where this is all happening. And his wife explains that all she did was talked about the barbecue and how Carmen should wear a bathing suit because of the slip and slide. And Carmen went all Mariah Carey on her, which we talked about this last week too. Dated references that last the test of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
I
Mariah
don't
Carey
think
is
this is
luckily
one.
evergreen. The problem with this reference, though, is do you remember any stories of Mariah Carey going crazy on anybody? Because I can't.
She's known to be a diva, like in the full spectrum of what that means.
Okay, so I don't recall that, but I didn't know if there was like a big story at the time or something that I just didn't remember.
If they're talking about her being crazy, if that's what they mean by all Mariah Carey, quote unquote,
I assume quote unquote crazy, yeah.
it could be that period of her life where she I remember she showed up to TRL and like gave everyone ice creams and was like talking erratically. It was probably right
I do
around that
remember
era.
that, yeah.
Because she was dating like an old guy from Sony or something, right? And then she left him, and then she kind of maybe that's what it was. Like I wouldn't call it a midlife crisis.
Then she had babies with Nick Cannon,
I told you he's hilarious.
host of The Masked Singer, and Danny Trejo was on that.
Huh? Well, there you go.
I knew it was Danny Trejo on the phone.
Yeah,
Wasn't Johnny Rotten on that recently too?
he was on it.
Yeah,
It's just so you guys know, I love The Masked Singer.
I've never seen it.
The problem with The Masked Singer is the episodes are too long in that there's too much filler stuff. I want to see the performances. I want to see who got eliminated. And I don't care about all the video packages and the milking it. And we'll be right back after this. And I get it. Trying to, get the sponsors in there.
Sure, yeah, you gotta spread time.
But at root, if you're watching it recorded and you have the convenience of fast forwarding, anyways, George heads into Carmen's room to talk to her. And all we know is Carmen doesn't want to wear a bathing suit, right? It's the swimming class. It's the same thing.
I assumed that it was she didn't get boobs yet, and everyone else did.
I
thought
thought
that too. Yeah.
I thought it was going to
That
be
was
something
my
to do
first
with her.
thought also, yeah.
It was going to be something about her body, for sure. She doesn't want to get into it, though. So George sits on the bed next to her and is like, "Oh, I shouldn't have had all that coffee and chili dogs today." He's like,
It's a tough combo.
"Someone's strangling a duck outside today, and we're about to hear it." And basically,
Step on a duck?
strangling a duck, he said.
I've heard a million times.
Yeah, step
I've
on a
never
duck,
heard
yeah.
anybody say strangling a duck.
Yeah, there's Rodney Dangerfield. Somebody step on a duck?
Right, yeah, like that's where you go to.
But
I've
yes,
also heard somebody say
essentially,
it was a mouse on a motor scooter in real life before Jamie left.
But yeah, George is threatening to gas his daughter out of the room, essentially, if she doesn't say what's wrong. She's like, okay, I'm Harry. George is like, well, you're my little girl. I don't want you to grow up and like shave. But then his transition is like, when you let it grow out, then we're just going to release you into the woods. And it's like, well, that's the opposite of, I want you to be my little girl forever. But then we're going to take you off like your Sasquatch. Yeah. Like he delivers jokes funny, but it made no sense.
Right? It's just anything he says is just funny.
He's funny.
But
It's
so
just
it
so
made it
funny.
work.
joke.
Yeah.
But when you like take the line and you read it, when
Yeah.
I read the joke out of context, you go, huh?
Yeah.
But yes, Joe, this is when Carmen says,
Don't go to Joe with it.
Jay's with me
listen,
on this one.
This
It
is,
is the
of
joke.
course
He is.
This is what the joke was supposed to be.
This is the joke.
Listen,
It's
I
so
get
Get
kind
it,
of
but you don't have
weird.
to go.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
I
don't go
wouldn't
to
have-
Joe
No, I
with
need
it.
you to keep going because I need you to explain
Yeah.
to me how this is how the joke
All right.
was supposed
So
to
first
go.
off, I wouldn't have let off the episode with it the way Joe did, but Carmen says it's not just my legs, it's something else too. And George's eyes bug out of his head
Yeah, he
because
makes it look,
that's what he thinks she's about to say. Like he doesn't want to have the conversation. And then she points to her armpits. He goes, "Oh, you have jungle pits."
All right, I didn't really grab that.
The lead into the joke was that it was something else, and he didn't want to have the conversation.
It was clearly in a more intimate area, was the joke.
Yes. Now Joe talks about it appropriately. But
What did I say wrong before?
but not nope. So
That scene came up like when I was watching it, and I immediately go, "Oh no,
Yeah.
Joe's here."
she said, this is why I don't want to go to swim class. Everyone makes fun of her. And George's like, when I was a kid, I got made fun of all the time too. You're stupid, you're fat, your father's a loser. Your grandma could be a real cruel woman. And I think that was a real laugh from the daughter too. I think it wasn't the
It did seem
was
genuine.
definitely
yeah.
it wasn't the
legit.
character, it was the actress that was laughing.
Yeah, I feel like that was take one and she didn't know the line and she really laughed.
And then George he agrees to let her shave and says, "You can use my old grandfather's razor."
Is it
the one that
weird that she had to ask?
To shave, I think at that
Why
age,
though? Like why if you're
I
getting
don't
hairy
remember-
shave, like I don't understand why you have to ask permission.
Well, if you have rules like you can't date, you can't wear makeup, you can't shave
Yeah.
your legs, like maybe there were just rules given
I don't
down to the
remember-
daughter.
No, it has
Clearly-
something to do with Spanish culture. I'm pretty sure, but don't quote me on that. I remember hearing something about that, and I think it was another Spanish movie I've seen where they wouldn't let the daughter shave.
I'm just trying to think of when I got to an age where I was shaving like my face, and I don't remember.
So when you were 7 years old.
Yeah, I don't remember if I had to ask or how that happened, but it is a conversation. I don't just go to the store and buy razors on my own and start shaving without
That's
bringing
true.
it up. I
Yeah.
guess.
But it seems so insignificant now that I don't remember, which is
Do you
also
remember
weird,
when we
know?
were all 18? Gillette would send you a razor in the mail,
I forgot about that. Yeah.
which is like, it was like so cool because like you turning 18 so you're like, ooh, I'm an adult now.
And Marlboro sent you cigarettes.
And then you get like a free razor, which is cool. But then they look back and it's like, how does Gillette have every person's like age and
They're
address
buying
on
some
file?
shit, and they know some stuff they shouldn't.
It's like, where did I sign up to Gillette to tell them when my 18th birthday was?
They
Your
just
birth
have they
certificate
just
did.
like paid the government to get like the draft records because you have to sign up for the draft. So like, we'll take all these names, please.
And
Which I never
I don't
did.
want to spoil the joke because it does get touched on later. But I like the idea of like this family heirloom razor. Like,
Yeah.
You don't want to use that kind of razor on your body.
that's the thing too. I was thinking
No.
like they make, even in 2002 was not 40 years ago, you know. By then we were all shaving. They definitely had razors for men, razors for women that are designed separately, you know.
Oh, at that point, you're like Mach 3. You had that.
Yeah.
What is this? Goo was a big thing
Yeah.
at that time.
The Marines. Remember that? This is a goo.
So, like, you know, there's all sorts of crazy. And now you have the subscription razors, which is like a big thing.
Yeah, so now you just have like his grandfather's old razor from Mexico. That was probably like a single blade. Like, here, go ahead, learn how to shave on this.
Which I think is like more of a it's like a family heirloom you don't use. You know what I mean?
Just leave it in a box.
Yeah.
Yeah, plus
Or
you
display
know,
it or whatever. It's like if somebody gives you like, this was grandma's decanter or whatever. You don't actually use it to, like anything fragile like that. You don't use it because you could break it. You're not going to use a 100-year-old razor just because it belonged to somebody. You were going to cut the shit out of yourself.
that's Mama's razor.
That's Mama's razor. That's how
And,
she died. She cut herself with the real razor blade in the razor. We couldn't stop the bleeding.
As George is leaving, he says, "Oh, and don't worry, we're going to take care of that mustache too." And she's like, she's nervous, but then after me, she's like, "Wait, is that the lie?" And he's like, "You don't get the whole lying thing. We should have never adopted you." But like I said, I do like the callback to that because it's a simple joke. I like that if you're going to do the callback, don't make it the main plot point. Make it something simple to just tie everything in.
Also, with everybody, chemistry-wise, he has the best chemistry with Carmen.
They do
Yes,
have
but I'll
they
say
have very
this
good
too.
Chemistry.
And I know it's just a pilot, and I've already said how I feel about the mother. I didn't think she was a very good actor either. Now, I don't know if she grows into the role over the years, and I don't remember having issues. Like, I've watched the show.
Oh, I
like
was saying
said,
they had
not-
good chemistry.
I thought they had good chemistry, but I thought her,
No, I mean, like, I was saying that him and Carmen
Acting
have good
chops-
chemistry.
yeah. But I don't think Carmen's acting chops are that great.
The daughter?
Yeah.
I think she's good.
I think she's good, yeah.
Really? I don't know. I didn't think she was terrible, but I thought a couple lines were really overdone.
She's way better than the son, which we didn't get to hear.
We didn't
very
speak.
much.
Yeah, I have nothing to go by.
Well, he was too busy playing basketball outside. He is Magic Johnson, after all.
So George heads downstairs after that, and he's talking to his wife in the kitchen. And I realized at that point, we don't see their living room at all.
Oh, good call. Yeah, you just see
It's literally just the bedroom and the kitchen and the
two
backyard.
bedrooms, a kitchen, yeah, and the backyard.
Yeah, it's weird. I thought it was
'Cause
weird
At the end, you
because
see George's bedroom, too.
it's such a staple of every family sitcom. Like the living room is the main area, and they don't enter it once in this episode.
We're just going to assume there's an alcove in there.
And usually we talk about like, all right, pilots, sometimes they skimp out on the sets and they keep it condensed. But there was a good amount. Like we said, we went through all the rooms. They did a backyard set. They had his job.
Yeah, there's the works. There's two work sets because there's
Yeah.
the floor and the office. Two offices.
And the boss's office. Yeah, so they didn't skimp out on sets, but like there's just no living room, which I thought was really interesting. That's when I realized it.
Yeah, it's
and
really
you guys-
interesting.
You guys didn't pick up on that?
I didn't at all. And usually
I
I
didn't
pick up on that
notice.
weird minutia, like the back door of Bless This House, right? Like I try to watch for those things, or like how often you see an alcove in
Yeah.
a living room. I wonder if
And
they show it in other episodes.
They do.
I've got to assume.
They
The
have
living
to,
room?
right? It's a
Yes,
weird.
yeah. No, it's definitely a part of the show.
It's a weird thing to show a family sitcom and never show the living room. Like that's the main room.
He comes downstairs. He's telling Angie about the conversation he just had with Carmen. He's like, you know what? Like, I thought I had it tough at my work, but man, what you have to do here with like the kids and the house, that's a lot. He's like,
Wait, don't you see the living room now? Like when she walks off,
No.
she sits in the chair and then
I was going to bring that up. That chair is in the dining room area. It's just a random chair.
And that's always there too. They have like a computer over there at one point. Like
Yeah.
I think I
It
just
is.
assumed that was the living room.
it's
But
like
no.
it's kind of
Yeah, I'm so
like
thrown off now.
I don't know. Maybe they were kind of going for like the home improvement vibe where like everything is kind of in like that open area, kitchen, dining area.
Yeah, because the home improvement house is like a super open floor plan.
Yeah, but there's a defined TV couch area.
The home improvement house is not structurally sound. There's no supports
there's
anywhere.
no posts holding up that second
Maybe
floor.
Tim built it.
Yes, that makes the most sense. Yeah.
But yeah, anyways,
Kill Wilson. Roll.
like I was saying, George was saying to her, like, oh, all these things you're dealing with in the house. You know, it'd be funny if I like fired my mom and made her the maid. Like, that would be funny, right? And she's like, wait, what? And because he was trying to push that, like, oh, you know, that you'd be all right with that, right? And George then explains the situation at work, and he has to fire either Ernie or his mom, and he's going to have to go with his mom. But if he does that, she's probably going to have to move in with them. And before Angie even has time to react, Carmen walks like down to the steps a little bit and asks if Max can lock his door tonight. He had another dream that Grandma tried to kill him. And she's like, see, this is what you want to bring into the house? And then I think like you guys are talking about how Max doesn't have a lot in this episode. If this was an opportunity for him to run down the stairs and say this, right?
I wish they showed the dream sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would have been a great like type of thing you could have done.
But and then Angie's like, you want to bring that into your house? Like, wasn't your childhood bad enough? Do you want to relive it? And George is like, she's changed. And she's like, how? Well, she's been smoking for 20 more years. Even if she's kicking my ass, she's going to have to stop for a smoke. And I was like, what a really, he's joking about it. And it's, you know, but they make it like his childhood was terrible.
Yeah,
you see how she treats him now?
Him having a very rough childhood.
Yeah, it's like, so she was abusive and mean to you all the time. And it's like, just this like, ha ha ha, that's my mom. But it's like this whole episode, in this episode alone, the amount of times it's brought up how bad of a mother she was to him, like growing up, is insane.
I will
Because
say
she
though,
had to
and
be
Nick, I
both
feel
the
like
mother and the father because the father was gone.
But that's not touched on in this episode.
we
And
don't
even
know
then,
that. Yeah.
you could still be a nice person to your child, you know, even if you're doing double duty.
Duty.
But
But yeah, I was gonna say, like, as somebody who's smoked for 20-ish years, and Nick, I know you're in the same boat as me. Imagine chasing somebody or having to fight somebody 20 years ago versus now. You're giving up earlier.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the same as it was.
that's getting older in general, because I'll tell you.
But like on top of that, you know, I could go down all the stairs in the World Trade Center. I don't think I go up all of them. You know.
George tries to go back to that coffee and chili dog thing, but Angie's like, I'm immune. We've been married for 14 years. But what was he like? I'm going to fart on you until you let my mom move in? Was that the angle there?
I just love that that's his go-to in life. Then she was like, she's used to it.
Yeah.
If that's
Tried this
real,
before.
though, if he's really, he's got chili dog and coffee gas, I don't care if they've been together for 20 years, not immune. That is still like a, I'm leaving the room, I don't want to be with you scenario.
But you can't, like, even the idea of, with this daughter, I get it. Like, I'm going to, like, gas you out of your room, and you don't want to leave the room. You're not going to be like, you can't just, like, fart in the kitchen, and your wife's like, okay, your mom can move in. That's not, it doesn't quite work the same way.
It's also very childish.
I think he's trying to get out of the conversation at that point. I don't think he's trying to force her hand. I think he's trying to just be like, please leave now. I'm scared.
And they have like a little bit of a weird, quiet, flirty moment where they're just kind of poking each other. And she does eventually cave in and says, you know what? Fine, she can move in. And this is when she sits in that
actually
chair.
going to lead to sex and was like, wait, is this their weird thing? Because he has just mentioned that he is not feeling well. And she's like, well, I don't give a shit. Like, that's fine, I guess. If you're like, I'm immune to it, but not turned on by it.
I guess he can't get pegged, but. But, in any.
Did you just break?
But, in any event, that's when she sits down in this sofa chair that's just in the kitchen. And I did take note of it. So I thought that was really weird. It's like, is this how we get around the living room thing? Just throw
Put like a recliner in there.
Yeah, that's good enough, right? And she tells George, well, you're going to have to make it up to me. And she's getting very flirty. And he goes, I'll go stretch. And she's like, no, I want to watch you fire your mom. It's like, I'll do it slow.
I'd love to get sexual about this.
But I do think George and her do have good, I think they have really good chemistry.
Yeah, I agree. They do.
And she's a real looker.
And they don't do what they like most sitcoms do is like make the wife like this overbearing, annoying, like Raymond's wife comes to mind.
Or
like,
Jill from Home Improvement.
Or Jill, exactly, yeah. Who
I
just
always
like
felt with
never,
Jill, though, there
never
was
meets
justification.
them on their level. Like, well, yeah, but I mean,
Jill's put in impossible situations
Yeah.
all the time.
And Jill was like, come on, Tam. Tam.
Like, and we've covered, again, I feel like this episode is the theme is we've just brought up every show that we've covered in the past. But if you think of like Everybody Loves Raymond, you couldn't like understand the wife's point of view because it was just like, hey, my mom's going to watch our kids while I go out. And she's like, what? Enough of that. It's like, well, that's a normal thing. Whereas
I don't
Tim's
think I've
like,
ever hated a sitcom mom more than I've hated Deborah in that episode.
but in like with Home Improvement, it's like, hey, I almost blew the house up and did all these things. So you can understand why she's fed up all the time. And she's actually more of a team player. So from there we get to the barbecue scene because we've heard about this barbecue throughout the episode. Carmen heads out to the yard to give her dad 2 packs of hot dogs that she's holding under her arms. When he asks her what she's doing, she's like, my arms are burning. Your grandpa's razor is so dull, it took forever. He's like, well, you changed the blade, right? She's like, was I supposed to? He says, that was the blade we used to shave grandpa right before we put him in the coffin. And she runs off. And Angie's like, this is why you don't lie to people. And George to Angie privately is like, that wasn't a lie.
I'm glad they were able to make this joke run so well through the whole episode.
What?
Because there's so many different situations.
Here's the thing. Shame on the parents in this situation. You just left your daughter to learn how to shave on her own.
Also, your armpits are very tender.
Yeah. First off, you gave her the old razor. Did you give her an extra blade and say, hey, you have to swap it out? Did you show her how to
why
swap
would you
it
just
out?
assume she knows how to do that? Yeah.
Right, she's a child.
Yeah.
Also,
And-
if she's that hairy, it's too long for like a straight razor or something. You need like a buzzer and then shave it like the rest off. Like,
But like,
That's
isn't that a
terrible.
moment where, like, I'm trying to remember, like, I
It must
don't
have
know if
pulled
my
so many
dad,
hairs.
I feel like my dad must have shown me how to shave, right? Because they're supposed to. I don't know if he did though.
I was
don't
taught by
remember it. I'm
sitcom
assuming
dads.
Somebody did.
Homer Simpson taught me.
But like, yeah, so I would have thought her mom would be like, this is how you shave your legs and stuff like that. So
If the
They just-
mom was there, though, she would have given her one of her lady razors. Because, there's always, like, come in a pack. So then they wouldn't have had this joke.
Right, and they're made
Yeah.
for more sensitive skin and stuff because they're not for like your stupid face that gets hit with wind and rain and is just like, hardened.
but for like,
Man face.
for S1E1 purposes here of the extreme deep dive, this whole shaving situation was handled very poorly by the parents.
Very
This
poorly.
is terrible parenting.
Agreed.
I don't have children, and I will still stand on the fact that this is bad parenting.
Yes.
Also, I've shaved my armpits before, and I know her pain. Because I've gotten razor burn down there before.
Not
Before,
worth
too.
it.
I've nared everything before too, and that is not a fun couple weeks coming back.
I've
in.
nared my back. That's it. Just the
Nared my
back.
whole chest and armpits once. It was great the first day. The next day, it was like 2 weeks of just nightmare.
How much faster could you swim?
Oh, I was pretty quick. Yeah, I was like an eel.
Oh, you're bringing back flashbacks with the smell of Nair. Ugh.
Oh, the smell is so bad,
Terrible.
yeah.
Like, oh, leave it on for 8 minutes exactly. If you go 10 seconds over, it will burn your skin off.
We're all
oh,
such manly men. Nearing our bodies.
It's one of those things where, like, yeah, I always hear of this, like, people talk about this with, like, GHB, which obviously I've never done, but it's like, GHB is this wonder chemical that does so much good for you, unless you take 1 drop more than you're supposed to, and then you die. It's like, oh, Nair is the same way, or it's like, you just wipe all the hair off. No one has ever done it in time to just cleanly wipe your chest hair off. It's just a nightmare.
No, you always leave some, and then you still gotta shave that area, but now the skin's tender.
Oh, it's so raw and
Yeah.
pink. It's
Well-
like it's like a half-plucked chicken by the time that you're done with it.
I've also waxed my back.
Ooh,
Jay was
how was
there.
that?
I was there. It was at Nick's house.
It's still on YouTube.
Did you scream Kelly Clarkson like Steve Carell?
No, but I did scream.
It was a lot of screaming. It was quite the event.
I can't imagine it feels good.
It does not feel good.
It's just one of those, like, is the juice worth the squeeze there? Like,
No, that's why I've never done it
Yeah.
again.
Did you do your whole back or just like the pelt?
Whole back.
Whole back, wow.
do you think there's been a moment where, like, a girl was on the fence with you and went, oh, he's got some back hair?
It's a me thing. I hate
Yeah.
it. I hate the look of it.
I'm with you. I don't have a very hairy back, but I do have like the pelt thing, you know? Like
I also have you as friends, and you're all judgy as fuck.
But I'm like a hairier human than you are.
everybody on this call is super fucking hairy. Everybody in this is in the same boat.
So Ernie heads over to George and says that it's a great party. And George is like, "Oh, where's your date?" And he says, "Oh, she's been parking the car, but it's been like an hour." And there's a couple things there.
I can't wait to see Ernie going forward.
Yeah. Why is she parking his car?
Because
And
she
she
just
stole
wanted
his
to
car.
steal it.
And also, yeah, but in his head, he's like, "Oh, that's normal." And then also, why would he wait an hour before even saying hi to George? It's not a huge party.
Maybe George was busy being a host.
You're at your best friend's house for an hour and you don't walk up and say hello real quick?
But also, if he was busy being a host, he would have said hi to people who showed up an hour ago.
Yeah.
Maybe Ernie was last on the list of the heys. You know?
Maybe.
Perhaps. I find it a little strange if he was there for that long. Ernie then starts talking about how he's heard rumors about layoffs. And George's like, "I don't want to talk about that right now." And as this conversation's happening, his mother happens to walk by. Ernie's like, "I knew it. It's me. Like, I'm getting fired." And his mom's like, "Come on. Like, you want to be the boss, go sit your friend down and tell him the truth." And George is trying to tell her, like, "Hey, you don't know the situation." She's like, "You've always been like this. You always want to be the good guy. Grow a pair." And he's like, "Mom, can I see you in the kitchen actually?" And she's like, "Sure." And I'm like, does she not realize isn't this just the situation she laid out for Ernie? So now he's calling her into the kitchen. She's not picking up on what this means.
Well, she's an inspector. She has a very important job, so her being laid off is very unlikely in her head, probably. So her being the one that got fired by her own son is probably didn't even cross her mind, especially
I think that's
one
yeah, I think you're right,
spineless,
Ferg.
like she says.
It's the blindsiding aspect that she never expects it would happen, so she can act completely like removed from it.
Yeah. And when they sit down, this is when he does say to her, like, "It's not Ernie, it's another department." And still she's not picking up, and she kind of wants the tea. And he finally has to say, "It's the inspectors." And he says he's sorry, but he has to do what's best for the company. She's like, "We're family. Was the company there when you won your Little League trophy?" He's like, "Ma, you weren't there. You dropped me off."
It's like you left me at the curb.
Yeah, it was one of my
I saw that joke coming. That one was one I saw from a mile
super
away.
obvious, but I think it was probably my favorite joke
It was
of the
funny.
episode.
Don't get me wrong.
At least
But
she gave him a
I
ride.
knew the next line was going to be something like, "You weren't there either," something
Yeah.
like that. Like,
Or like, "You were sleeping with the coach," or yeah, something. Yeah, they would have found something.
But he does tell his mom, like, "I talked to Angie, and it'd be okay if you moved in with us." And she's like, "Oh, Angie, what an angel." She's like, "She's got you like this," and like holds her hands up doing like the holding you by the balls thing, and walks off.
I
He
didn't
goes,
get that.
"No," and then he goes, "There's more room now that you let go." And again, I don't
A
get
weird
her
line.
joke or his joke in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one missed a little bit.
I didn't understand it. Maybe it was hilarious, but it went over my head.
No, Angie agreed, "You can come here and live with us." And she's like, "She has you by the balls." She just agreed so you can move in the house.
Yeah, like it's not a bad thing, or like it's not. It was he asked his wife to do something, and she said yes. This
And
isn't
then-
her being in control scenario.
Yeah, and then his reply is like, "Oh, she can have me by the balls because now you don't have me by the balls?" Like, what?
Or maybe she means because she's allowing it, he's in debt to her. So now she's got him by the balls.
Oh,
but
like,
it's
why
just
did you
said
even
wrong?
have to ask her, maybe?
Something like that.
Maybe,
I don't
yeah.
know. Like I said, it didn't make sense. It was a bad joke.
Yeah, it was a
You know what,
weird,
though?
like, way to
It's one
close
of
out.
very few, so I'll give it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's fine.
their hit to miss ratio is very high in this, so you're allowed to have a few misses.
And then after that, the next scene is George walking into his boss's office. And he tells him, "I finally made a decision. And he's going to lay off his mom and the inspectors." And he goes through the thought process as to why. Essentially, Ernie's department, if they laid them off, they'd have to outsource, and that would cause like a trickle-down effect, and then there'd be more outsourcing, whereas Ernie's department can't technically inspect their own stuff, so you can get rid of that department. So I do like that they used a little bit of logic, too, in describing that. Like, you didn't need the extra note, but I think it made the situation a little realer.
It makes him not seem cruel for just firing his mom or having to make
Right,
a choice.
yeah.
So there's logic
By
behind
flipping
why
a
he did it.
coin, he has reasoning to do it.
And Powers says, "Good for you. it's a big thing in a boy's life when he gets to fire a parent. He's like,
love this whole spiel.
my pop never saw it coming. It was a good birthday. So this guy is heartless, just so heartless. George is like, well, it wasn't fun when I had to do it yesterday. And he's like, wait, what? He's like, you weren't supposed to actually fire her. It was a test. And George's like, a test? That's why I work in a factory. I'm not good at tests.
That, I think, is one of the best
That was a good
realistic
one.
lines, because every one of us have done that kind of job, and it totally rings home,
I work in that type of job, and we often joke about this is why we work this type of job.
Right, yeah. I've spent a lot of my days unloading trucks.
You know what would have been a really interesting plot point? Is if it was a test, but he laid all that out to him, and he realized he could save a lot of money, and then he fired them.
Yeah,
Because
you
of
bring up some good
George's
points.
plan.
Yeah.
He's like, you got a good point there. That's fucking great. That is such... How often do we write these shows better, Ferg? That is wonderful.
Right?
Then Powers tells him, like, you're the first guy who came from the line who's actually made it to manager. I need to see what your loyalty to the company was. And I didn't know if you were capable of firing your own mother. And George is like, oh, you want to know what I'm capable of? I quit. Powers, like, he just runs up and tries to stop him at the door before he can leave. And he's like, is there anything I can do to make it up to you? Please stay. I can't run this place by myself.
Can I just say that this really shows George is a really good actor. Like, it's completely different than he's been the entire thing, but that was like real rage and like
He got serious, yeah.
yeah, showed his acting chops.
George's reply to him was like, I want you to shut down between Christmas and New Year's from now on so everyone could have a little time off. Powers, who was desperate a second ago, was like, oh, no. He's like, that'll cost way too much money. He's like, well, I got some news for you. We don't work that week anyways. We just stand there and talk about what an SOB you are. Fa la 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 la.
That is a perfect line, too, because I mean, anybody who has a job in the general, if you work with any other company, like most people are just not working, or if there are people in the office or they're around, they're doing the bare minimum. So why make anyone be there who doesn't have to be?
Right, yeah.
I'll tell you this: I have to work every holiday. I don't do a damn thing when I'm there.
Yeah, because there's nothing to do. Like,
No one else is around, yeah.
like Boeing isn't calling the Powers brothers or Powers and Sons, on Christmas Day, oh, we need this airplane part. You know what I mean? It's just not happening. Like,
Yeah, Greg Boeing is at a family party. He's not doing shit.
I, unfortunately, have one of few jobs where every day of the year is the same, and holidays have zero meaning as far as what needs to happen in a day. So
oddly enough, I think it's probably busier on that day, isn't it?
not always, depending on which holiday, sometimes the day of, but especially that, like, the couple days before and after.
Even with that company for over a decade now, though, right? You must be pretty okay on taking holidays off.
For the most part, yeah. I mean, if I need a holiday off, I don't have to work it. But yeah, I mean, but that's because of how long I've been there.
Right.
So,
seniority.
essentially there's plenty of people that do have to be there whether they like it or not.
Right.
But in any event, during all that, Jim Powers is his full name. He agrees. And George adds, and I want 2 weeks off paid. Not for me, for my mom. Which I guess is fair because of the fake firing thing, right? It's not just like this allegiance to his mom, but because of this, like this is the makeup to the situation.
Yeah, but he fired the mom's department.
The whole
Why
department,
why don't all of them get weeks off?
Because they didn't know. Because there's a chance that no one else knew but her at this point.
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah, but they're at a friendship level where she's punching them all in. They're all close. There's
she's
no way
probably
she didn't
she's probably
tell
calling them all. Yeah.
Yeah, they probably would know. If you're right, I forgot about the punch-in part.
It's just
yeah.
you just need to ignore that, I think.
Yeah. And it was just like, oh, I'll give her 3. He's like, I don't like her anyways. And they shake hands. And I guess it's like, so it's just, I just rather her not be here. So whatever.
Yeah.
So now George heads to like the main line and he addresses the whole crew. And he's like, I know there's been a lot of rumors about layoffs, but I want everyone to know they're not true. Actually, I have some good news for you. And he tells them about the week off. And there's silence because I think in all their heads are like, well, what's the catch here? So he says, with pay. And everyone starts cheering.
Yeah.
And I like this little back and forth with Ernie and him. Because now Ernie's like, oh, let's go to Thirsty's. First round's on me. And George's like, I'm in. He's like, George is back. And he's like, but if I catch any of you drinking, you're fired. Like, I still like him, but I'm disappointed. And he's still like, because he's still doing this as a big announcement to everybody. I like the way that played.
Yeah,
I like the idea that they all go there and just order like 17 Cokes. Just like, okay. It's like being at a kid's
Sad.
birthday party where there's just like the
All right,
big pictures of Cokes come on the table.
That'll be $15.
Yeah, it's like, okay, please tip big.
Even the
And,
bartenders are mad.
Yeah, like no one would
This
be
sucks.
happy.
and during this, George's mom walks up and they kind of walk off separately. And she's like, so what happened for real? And he's like, don't worry about it. You got your job back. Just be happy. And she's like, you couldn't pull the trigger, could you, Mr. Good Guy? And I'm like,
And
I
she's
know I keep
still
saying it,
going at him.
but, like,
It seems unnecessary.
how
yeah.
unnecessary at this point. You just got your job back and now you're yelling at him, calling him soft. Did you take a pay cut? Did you beg for mommy's job? It's like, what the fuck? Like, it bothered me so much because of how unnecessary it was. Okay, you want to be mean to him once in a while and like you say jokes at his expense, but this is the point where I felt they were like the writing team overdid it.
Well,
Why
I
is
mean,
she-
as far as I know, this is how George Lopez actually grew up. So I think he wanted
Yeah.
that in the show.
Like it's his call.
yeah.
Because she's like badgering him, like, oh, I got your job back. And she's being she's meaner to him now than when she found out that she lost a job.
Because he said before, he goes, the way I grew up, there was no option besides comedian. He's like, there was nothing else was ever going to work. So I think it was it's actually his grandmother who raised him. And she was just like this awful, rude bitch to him all the time. So I think he wanted to portray that with Benny, and they did a good job. I guess if you know who raised George Lopez, they're probably spot on.
And
I
out
always
of
appreciate
curiosity,
when somebody pulls that much of their real life into it instead of just being like, and in this show, I'm a mechanic.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like, you know.
Also,
Nick-
because George looks so old, like all the time, I feel like Benny looks too young to be his mother.
Yeah. I mean, she probably is, honestly.
sitcoms do that all the time.
Yeah.
So you guys mentioned her name is Benny. That was never brought up in this episode, right?
No.
It was always just like your mom, even like when
Yeah, I
the
don't
boss is
think
talking
so,
about
yeah.
her.
I feel like they say it.
I think they
I
just
don't
say
recall.
your mom.
Yeah, I don't think it got mentioned at all in this episode. As they're yelling, George is like, he tells her exactly what happened. The whole, I was being tested, and she doesn't believe him. It's like, well, you always say you can tell when I'm lying by looking in my eyes, right? Looking in my eyes, and she looks and he goes, I fired your ass. And she stares like, you fired my ass. And she's like, I'm proud of you. And she says how like his balls finally dropped.
Yeah, didn't expect that. I thought the before the balls drop joke, I did like the realization because it's the first time in this whole episode where she doesn't seem like she's so over the top. Like she finally seems like a real human when she says that one line where she's like,
For one line
"You
until
fired
the
me."
second line. Yeah, until the follow up without her even pausing.
Yeah.
Said something unrealistic again.
You see, it's not legit hate; it's tough love. And, like you see it there when she's like, "Oh, I'm proud of you."
I feel like by 40 though, the tough love has to like wane a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. He's your boss. He's doing okay.
Well, by then it's a habit.
I guess, but like again, like Jay said, like he's in his 40s, he owns a house, he's got a kid, two kids, a wife. Like he's doing all right. You've done okay.
He's got a house in Southern California, by the way.
Right, which
Yeah.
is not inexpensive.
At no point in time was cheap.
Never.
I don't see the California dreams whenever he wants.
I don't think they establish it, but it is where they are, yeah.
Did they even say like state or anything like that?
Not
There
in
was
this
really
episode,
nothing, right?
no. Yeah.
And
Now
I do
Ferg,
like that.
I was just saying now, Ferg, I'm just hoping that he takes her out to a nice dinner at a like fish restaurant and California Dreams are playing in the background. Like that's their next gig. Like I love the carryover of this.
Surf dudes with attitude.
Surf and
Kinda
turf dudes with
groovy.
attitudes. Captain Fish Hooks. That's what I assume the restaurant's called.
When this episode's done and it's released, I want to take a pen and tally mark every old episode we did that we've referenced. I feel like it had to be
lot.
at least 25 episodes that we brought up.
Hey, every
longer
show
we go,
needs a
the more
clip
it'll
show,
happen.
Jay.
Yeah. George Lopez, aka The Clip Show.
Every sitcom got one.
But to go back, that scene buttons with, Mom, they don't make Hallmark cards for people like us. And they kind of walk off together, which I thought was I really liked that line. I thought that was a line that, I don't know, it resonated.
Yeah, no, I do like that. Like it gives you this is where this show is going to be. This is the family dynamic.
Yeah.
It's a good
Because I
pilot
think that
line.
way. Like, I wouldn't, listen, my upbringing was not George Lopez. And I didn't have like that abusive situation at home. But like, was my family the typical Hallmark, like, hey,
Oh,
Dad,
nobody's
let's
is,
play
yeah.
a catch? So it was like, that line to me was like, cause you see that stuff and you go like, this isn't, you read these cards like, this isn't how I feel. Like, I don't even feel like I can give this card to my parent. So I don't know. Something about that line just felt so real. I really enjoyed it. And we get to the one final scene, which was in the master bedroom, which was fucking huge.
The big master.
Huge. Even
Yeah,
for a
it is,
TV
yeah.
set, the bedroom was gigantic. Angie says she's proud of George for how he handled everything. And they're kind of laying in bed together and the kids run in. And we find out Max had another bad dream where grandma chased him with a knife. So now all four of them are in bed. And then right behind them is grandma holding a knife. And the whole family screams, which I thought I like that a lot.
I don't know. I liked George's scream the most.
Yeah.
It was really funny. Yeah.
And then she just goes, "Who wants cake?"
End episode.
It was so weird. It was a really
I
weird
know. Why would you
thing,
just
like,
walk around with the knife?
Why is she in the house?
Yeah.
They're all
What
asleep.
time is
Yeah,
it?
why is
Because
she
everybody
there?
else is in bed. It's not cake time.
Yeah. Everyone's going to bed. You don't live there and you're just down there with a cake. None of it makes sense.
Like, I know that's a running gag in Golden Girls where, like, nobody can sleep and it's 2 a.m. and they have cake, but that does not seem to be the issue here.
Yeah.
No. You don't just show up late at night with a cake and then just walk around with this giant knife. That's not a cake knife.
Maybe she showed up because she heard about Benny's dream. She's Benny. I'm sorry. She heard about the son's dream and she wanted to fuck with him.
I mean, it seems like that's the character to do it, right?
Yeah.
I think pulling the fact that there's no logic behind it, I did think it was a nice last scene for the show.
Yeah, you're leaving out. It wasn't just a knife. It was a giant fucking butcher knife.
Well, as I said, it wasn't it's
for
not a cake knife. Yeah,
It's
it's
not
like,
what you cut a soft cake with.
It's what fucking Michael Myers walks around with.
yeah. It's like, are you filleting meat? But yeah, that's the conclusion of the episode. So yeah, as a whole, George Lopez, I think I said the writing there was a lot of jokes that didn't land. There was some, I thought the end scene, there was some things that just, they didn't follow like they had a lot of sitcoms do it. They have the joke and then they don't care how they get it in there sometimes. The joke was written down, they're committed to it. I think the show is a little bit of a victim of that at times, but overall, not bad. There was a lot of clever writing in there too. Like we talked about with the telling the lie runner that happened.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it was there was a lot of nice buttons on every scene, and they even tied up the whole episode the right way. So I don't know. It just the whole flow of the show just seemed really organic especially for a pilot too, like which can be rocky just by their nature. So I think they did a great job.
Yeah, Jay, you had mentioned it earlier where, like, you get dropped into their world and never once do you question it or have to figure out where you are. You're never drowning in this show. You're constantly, like, aware of the setting, the people, it's comfortable. And a show like this, to find out, that, especially for me who's never seen it before, that there's over 100 episodes is, like, oh, fucking amazing. Like, that's on the list now.
Yeah.
Once you're all caught up with Reba.
Oh, I finished Reba and we're now on to Shameless.
Okay.
Starring one of the main characters from Reba.
I don't know if I've ever
so
seen
excited
Shameless.
for you.
Shameless is amazing.
Yeah.
I had never seen it before either.
Is that the William H. Macy show?
Yeah.
Yeah, I never saw it.
It's good.
High recommend so far.
But Joe, don't ever watch the British one. It's unwatchable.
Oh, yeah, there is a British one too, huh?
Yeah, it's what this is. I don't know if this is a reboot or a retooling of the British one. The British one was first.
As they tend to be.
Yeah,
I've never seen it though.
They have these really strong, like, Cockney accents, and it's like you can't understand them, and it's just really hard to watch. And I love British television, and it's like the first one I'm like, oh no.
Subtitles only.
But yeah, is there anything else you guys want to bring up about the show before we go on?
Not here.
No, we talked a lot about this show.
As we tend to.
We do.
So nothing left to do here but the green light or cancel. Guys, we don't know Gordo's vote yet, so you'll have to stay in touch on social media, S1E1 Pod. On Instagram, there will be a graphic up at some point of the week that, when this episode's out. So keep an eye out for that, and then you'll find out the final score if it doesn't, if it's a tiebreaker situation. I will be very honest. I don't think it's going to come down to a tiebreaker.
Yeah, don't hold your breath.
But for argument's sake, follow us on Instagram anyways, S1E1 Pod. But I'm going to go in the order I see you in. Nick, starting with you.
Yeah, I think I made it pretty obvious. This is a green light. It's just a lot of fun. This is, removing my nostalgia for this show, which I did watch a lot back in the day. It's just well done. All the characters are, you get to know all the characters and you like them all, with exception to the mother, who you're not supposed to like. So I think they nailed every aspect of each character that you wanted. Max is a little young. They're not really going to delve too much into his character. What the hell's the daughter's name? Why can't I think of it?
Carmen,
yeah. Carmen was good for her age. Again, we've talked about it 1,000 times. You can really miss with child actors sometimes. They can just suck. And I don't think that was the case with her anyways. Rest of the cast, great. Writing, good. Funny was funny. And I really enjoyed it, and it made me want to keep... It was a struggle to not just let this keep going. I really wanted to do it, so green light.
Ferg.
When we did Will and Grace last week, I was about 15 minutes in, and it felt like I was an hour and 20 minutes in. When this one ended, I was like, holy shit, that's already over. And that just shows how much more I enjoyed this show than Will and Grace. So I just like to cancel Will and Grace again. But this definitely gets a green light from me. The comedy is just so good. And they're just all so likable. The way they deliver the jokes and stuff. Even if it wasn't the best episode, I would have greenlit this just because I enjoyed it so much. And I intend to continue it later tonight when I go to bed.
Joe.
I feel like I don't have to say anything. I feel like everything Ferg said is exactly what I feel, straight down to the misery I had watching Will and Grace versus watching this. And I take pretty intense notes. I have like 6 or 7 pages of notes every episode we do. And I always will look up when I pause to finish writing at how far along I am on a show. Will and Grace was a tough one, where every time I saw like 17 minutes left, 15 minutes left, I just dreaded it. And this show, exactly like Ferg said, I just wanted to keep watching it. It's immediately added to my queue. I knew about it, but I never thought about it. And now I'm like, oh, perfect. We just finished another 100-episode TV series. And this one's in the queue for the next one. And it's a huge green light. This is great. George Lopez, super funny.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you guys. I'm also going to give it the green light. I did have some problems with the show. Mainly, I just hated his mother so much. And I get you're not supposed to like her, but it was like, when you're that mean, it takes me out of the fun of a sitcom. And I thought some of her meanness was too relentless to look past, but I think the fact that I would greenlight it anyways just tells you how strong everything else about the episode is. George Lopez, I said it earlier, there's a charisma about him. He was perfect for this role. Obviously, it's based around him, but he's meant to be in the role of the lead in a sitcom like this. There's probably a reason why we know him more as a television actor than we do from his stand-up, because this was really his wheelhouse. He really does. He shines here. I enjoyed it. It just like you guys said, it flies by. It's just insane to me how quick it flies by. So yeah, that's 4 out of 4 from us. So regardless of Gordo's vote, which what a wild card he can be sometimes. So I really don't know which way it's going to go. At the very least, 4 out of 4 so far. So
too much poop
congratulations.
humor for him to cancel.
Yeah,
he'll have to like this one.
Multiple poopy and fart jokes. He's probably gonna greenlight it. Congratulations, George Lopez. You do live on to see episode 2 with us. That's all the time we have this week, guys. Remember, S1E1pod.com. I stress it every week at the end. Please subscribe everywhere you can subscribe. Like, follow, do all those things. Follow our social medias, S1E1pod. We post videos every week. We post other things every week. Plenty of tweets. Plenty of content from us. They are not dormant accounts. So interact with us. Hit us up. We have actually been getting more messages lately, which is much appreciated. We try to get back to everybody as soon as we can. So thank you to those of you who have reached out recently. Some good episode suggestions that we might look into for the future. But yeah, that's it, guys. That's all the time we have for this week. Thank you again. Goodbye.
I think we got the best bed riddle.